Hello, welcome back to Elise Reads and Speaks. Today I am starting something a little different. I realized that I have this like Netgalley addiction. It started over the summer where I just requested a bunch of books. I was approved for a bunch of books and then I just like couldn't stop. I couldn't stop. All right, so I've been going through months and putting together a spreadsheet, making sure that I read them all before their release date, just so that I am a good reviewer. And I realized for October, I had requested 13 books. I got through them all. You know, some I read a little earlier. Most of them I actually read through the month of October before their release date. And then I was like, why don't I also keep track of this with BookTube? And then I figured it's just something a little different too, like to keep you aware of the arcs that I have and will be reading. So today I'm going to bring you my October arcs. I have read them all, and then I'm also going to do a video like maybe later sometime this week of my November arcs, which I have not read any for yet, but I will. Okay, but today is just the October arcs. They've almost all been released by now, but I figure I will just introduce you to all of them just in case you haven't heard of them. Maybe something will sound good for you and you will have a nice new release to put on your shelf to be read, because we need to make our TBR shelves longer and longer, don't we? So I'm gonna start at the arcs that I have for the beginning of October all the way to the end of October. It's not necessarily the order in which I read them, but for the sake of this video, I think it will just organize it a little better of what was released when. So the first one was released October 2nd, and that was Stolen Children by Michael Wood. If you remember my wrap up from last month, I did not realize that this was a book in the middle of a series, and I just read like the 6th one in a series. It's okay. Again, it's like an episode of Law & Order. It's one of those kind of books, you know, an investigation, it's a new case, so I wasn't really missing a lot. I ended up giving it 3 stars because I was able to guess the mystery a little early on, but it was all right. Maybe I'd go back and read the others, maybe not, but I thought it was a pretty decent book. Then we have October 6th, which I had 3 arcs that were all released on that day. So the first one is Guardians of the Garden by Theresa Pocock. This one I also talked about in last month's wrap up, that I didn't realize that there would be so many religious themes going into this one, but I was also pretty hooked because of the different magic that you could see in their eyes. Like, you know, if their eyes were blue, that meant that they had a specific type of magic. If their eyes were brown, they also had magic, but it was a different type of magic than the ones that had blue eyes. There was also purple. There was like brown eyes with a little splash of yellow that you don't even know what the yellow means. Oh, the magic got me. The magic pulled me in. And Guardians of the Garden was the first in her series. I know that there's going to be several books after that one, and I will most likely read them all. I ended up giving that one 4 stars. The next October 6th release on my list was The Mirror, Broken Wish by Julie C. Dow. I loved this one. I read it months ago. I gave it 5 stars. I am all about some fairy tale retellings. I just absolutely love this one. And I felt like this one just, oh, it gave me all the fairy tale vibes and feels that I wanted to feel. It was, oh, it's so good. It's so good. I'm sure that you've heard a lot about it. This is by one of the major publishing houses, but it's so incredibly good. It's that fairy tale that revolves around the couple that wants something from the witch's garden, and they get something from the witch's garden to help them have a baby, you know, that old fairy tale, except that it gives them such rich backstories, friendship between them, and then what happens from that point onward. It was just 5 stars. The next October 6th release I had was The Code for Love and Heartbreak. This one is by Jillian Cantor, and I loved this one too. I ended up giving it 4 stars. It's an Emma retelling, but it's like a high school coding club Emma retelling. It's just so great. I love Jane Austen to begin with. So any Jane Austen retellings, except for Mansfield Park, because I don't like Mansfield Park, but any other Jane Austen retellings, I usually read because I'm just totally into it. This one is about a club in high school, a coding club, and they have to like put together this new app and bring it to, it's almost like a science fair, except it's like a coding fair, and they hope that they come in first place. So, you know, you have the Emmett in there, you have the Knightley in there, the Jane Fairfax, the Frank Churchill, all those different characters, and seeing like how they played out in this high school coding club. It is so fun. I gave that one 4 stars. I really enjoyed that one. Okay, moving on to October 13th, I had 2 releases for that date. The first one is The Midnight Bargain by C.L. Polk. And I was pleasantly surprised by this one. I ended up giving this one 4 stars, and honestly the only reason I didn't give it 5 stars is because it did take me a while to get into. It took me like 20% of the book to get into, and I know people personally that would have DNF'd if it took them 20%. So I get that, but that's why I don't usually DNF, because I need to see if it gets better, and that one did. That one really did. This one I really enjoyed because I felt like it was like this heavy dose of feminism. They're in this patriarchal magic society, but these women, when they get married off, they're expected to put on this collar that dampens their magic because, I mean, the only purpose of a woman, of course, is to have babies, like, you know, enraging. Okay, but that's a theme in here. But the reason that I liked it so much is because this main protagonist that was in it, you know, does fall in love with this guy, and he's trying to be the best guy that he can and say, oh, you know, you only have to wear this collar while we're expecting a child. I won't make you wear it for the whole marriage. And he thinks that's a good thing, and she's like, that still kind of sucks. And she's right. And it was like the guy didn't suck, but at the same time you realize like good guys in this community really aren't great because they're still treating women like objects for their own means, you know? It was just, oh, it was so good. And his sister also didn't want to get married, so like the sister and the main protagonist were kind of bonding together to escape. Oh, it was a good time. It was a good time. 4 stars. The second release for October 13th is a well-known one. This one is The Once and Future Witches by Alix E. Harrow. And I think I'm gonna be in the minority. Like, I gave it 3 stars. It didn't really grab me in, but I can see other people really loving this book. So I do think I'm gonna be in the minority. It wasn't a book for me, but I could see some good stuff in it. I liked the relationship between the sisters. And I mean, I like magic. I like suffragettes, and I like what it was trying to do. It just wasn't one that pulled me in. And, you know, like months afterwards, I guess I read it 2-3 months ago, I don't remember much about it, so it didn't leave a lasting impression on me. I also have 2 October 15th releases. The first one is The Vow by Debbie Howells. I gave this one 2 stars. I expected it to be more of a psychological thriller and in her head, and it turned out to be like gaslighting, and the motivation for what was going on was very convoluted, and it was a letdown, and I just wasn't into it, so I got 2 stars. It held my attention, so that's why it's getting like 2 stars instead of 1. 1 is when I actively dislike something, but it just wasn't for me. The next October 15th was a book for me. This was The Cup and the Prince by Leitao. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. And this is one of those books that I feel like was written for me, okay? It had like a little bit of Throne of Glass in there with the, you know, the assassin tournament. This wasn't a tournament for assassins, but it still was a tournament. I have figured out that I am a fan of tournaments in books, especially if there is a kick-ass female protagonist, which there was in this one. At the very beginning of the book, like, I'm not spoiling anything, she's hooking up with this guy in her village and then realizes that he's such a player, and she like takes his place and is like, F this, you're going to the tournament? I'm going to the tournament, goodbye. Like, I thought that was great. And through this, they're competing for something called the Blood Cup. This was my only problem with the book. I don't feel that the Blood Cup was explained enough. We don't really find out what it does. We just know that one of the brothers, the Prince brothers, really wants it, and it's kind of alluded to why he wants it, but that's a spoiler, so I'm gonna leave that to the side. I just felt that that should have been explained more since it's a big point of the tournament of the book itself. However, it was a book for me. I loved her. I love the relationship that you see blossoming. I mean, you know what's gonna happen eventually, okay? Because this is the first book. There's gonna be more to come. You know who's gonna end up together. But there were also some characters that took me by surprise that I did enjoy. I'm telling you, this series is for me, which means that the rest of my book club, with the exception of Katie, would probably hate it. But there's a reason books are written. You gotta find your audience. This is my kind of book. All right, then I had 2 releases for October 20th. One was a 1-star, one was a 5-star, so vastly different. Let's start out with the bad one, okay? The 1-star I gave to Queens, Kings, and Monsters by Teddy Baire. All right, I will say that I did not notice until I was at book club recently and I said that name out loud, Teddy Baire, like a teddy bear. I've only ever read it, so it didn't compute in my head that like, what the heck is with that author's name? In my defense, the last name is B-A-I-R-E. And I mean, like, that can't really be his real name, can it? I don't know. And I say he, but I guess Teddy could go either way. I don't know. Anyway, the reason that I didn't like this book, it was very rapey. It was a rapey book talking about whores and cocks and young girls being hit on by old men and old men saying that they wanted to break them in, and gross. And there were so many parts that were confusing. I got to the end of the book and I was like, so why was this scene in there? And what happened to these people? And what was I supposed to get from that? It seemed like a lot of things were in there for shock value, and I'm not into that. I felt like this author was trying to be kind of Game of Thronesies. And oh, I'm even wearing a Game of Thrones shirt right now. Stark, total Stark. But this just, oh, that book really, really missed it. Like, I actively did not like that one. I actively hated it. That's why it gets the so coveted 1-star. The other book that was released on October 20th got the coveted 5-star. This one was Invisible Differences by Julie Dachez, and I've talked about this one on my channel before. It is a graphic novel. I'm not really into graphic novels, but I just wanted to try this one because the subject matter was interesting to me. Again, if you haven't been here before, I am a speech language pathologist. I work with a lot of kids with autism. This graphic novel is about somebody that's older, like an adult with an adult job, realizing that she may be autistic, and she goes through the channels of getting that diagnosis and what it means and how she can ask and advocate for herself in her job place for different accommodations. Like, it was just so good. And the graphic novel, I feel like it was a perfect marriage because it started off with like black and white pictures with little spots of red, and by the time you get to the end of the graphic novel, it just colors are blooming everywhere because she like figures out who she is and how she can be the most comfortable and happy version of herself. Oh, it's so good. It's so good. Just talking about it, I want to read it again. Like, if I could give it more than 5 stars, I would. All right, October 23rd, I only had one release. This was Race to the Finish Line by Aisha, Yusuf, and I gave it 2 stars. The cover, man, the cover is so beautiful and it's eye-grabbing and it makes you want to read it. However, I did not like the writing. It was very jumpy all over the place that I'd have to like go back a couple pages and be like, wait, did I miss something? Did I mistakenly just skip a chunk? No, like it was the writing. It was very confusing. And then some of the way that some things were handled, in real life, that would not have played out that way. And I get, like, in fantasy, dragons in real life, not gonna play out that way, okay? But this is a contemporary book. You're supposed to think that the things that happen in this novel are believable, and just the solutions to some of the problems in there, they were not believable for me. So I gave it 2 stars, which was a bummer, because I liked what it was trying to say. I just thought it failed with the execution. 2 left. We've got 2 books left. All right. My second to last book is an October 27th release, and I know that I'm going to be in the minority for this one. It is Kingdom of the Wicked by Kerri Maniscalco, and I gave it 2 stars. Ooh, I know people are gonna love this one. And I looked at the premise and it's so interesting, and even just reading the back of the book, it drags you in there. And I just wasn't into it. I was not into the characters. I wasn't into the plot. I felt like it was very face value, that it didn't like dive deeper into the things I wanted it to dive deeper into. I mean, 7 deadly sins having personification, right? That's when you're personifying something that isn't a person. Yes, okay, so you're personifying sins. All right, so like wrath is a person, and envy is a person, greed is a person. Well, I say person, but they're really like these evil, wicked princes of some other domain. All right, like that sounds awesome. And there's witches, and I love magic, and this seemed up my alley because you're trying to understand, like, there's this murder mystery, and why did it happen? Because this twin twin sister. Okay, the other half of the twin. Yeah, she was murdered, and you're trying to figure out why and who did it and what did she get involved in with these wicked princes, and it just sounds so up my alley, and I just wasn't into it. I wasn't into it. You know, I read her other book, Stalking Jack the Ripper, and people love that one, and I gave it 3 stars. It's probably more of a 2 now that I can't remember much about it, and I thought the ending was kind of a letdown. Oh, that's kind of what it was like here. But you know what? I say that, and I guarantee people are gonna love this one. Like, I know when I looked at Goodreads, people are giving it 4 and 5 stars. And I was like, oh well, 2 stars. But let me roll into my last book for October. This one comes out October 31st, A Stitch in Time by Kelley Armstrong. I just finished it yesterday and I gave it 5 stars. Like, this is a total book for me. It has time travel. It has romance, it has ghosts, it has a murder mystery. It's so good, it's so good. And it's Victorian era too. Well, you know, it's time travel, so not everything is Victorian. It's like present day and going back to Victorian and coming back to the present day, and it was so good. And the way that she connects to this other time is through a shared bedroom. So this person that she shares a bedroom with in the Victorian era, they end up like falling in love because she keeps going back in time in her bedroom to his time, and they start a relationship. But something happens, I won't tell you what happens, but the premise is that they're separated for, I believe it's 23 years. So they end up meeting on later on in life. Like, by this time she's already a widow. She's 38 years old and she's a widow because of this cancer that happened to her husband. But she reconnects with this ghost. Well, it's not a ghost, with her time travel buddy in this house, and it's so good. Like, the romance was great, but there's also a murder mystery, and she's trying to piece together like what happened to his sister and his ex-fiance and this boy that used to work in his house. It was so good. It was so good. Oh, I want to go back and read it already. It was a total awesome spooky October read. As soon as I finished it, I actually messaged Rachel at Book Boop. If you are watching this and you did not get my message on Goodreads, you need to go read this book, because you were the first person I thought of when I finished reading it. Okay, so those are all the arcs that I had for October. 13 books, and I've read them all. Upcoming for November, I think I have 9 books, so I need to read 9 books, and I'll do it, okay? Like, I want to be a good reviewer, you know, so I'm trying to read them before they come out on their release dates. We'll see how that goes. Okay, thank you for tuning in to Elise Reads and Speaks. I will catch you next time, guys. Bye!